As members are aware, partner states of the East African Community have a standing agreement to present and table budget statements to their respective parliaments every second Thursday of June, which is today. I hope the foregoing adequately clarifies the nature of today's event. And before I call the Cabinet Secretary, I wish to welcome our invited guests who comprise Cabinet Secretaries, Principal Secretaries, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and all other invited guests seated in the Speaker's row, diplomatic boxes, and the galleries. The Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'U, PhD, EGH, you may now proceed to the podium.
Mr. Speaker, it is my honor and privilege to present to honorable members of this august House and the people of Kenya the second budget of the Kenya Kwanza administration under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya and the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces. This budget reaffirms the priority policies and strategies for achieving the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that is progressively improving the livelihoods of Kenyans. This statement is presented in the fulfillment of the requirements of Standing Order number 241 of the National Assembly and Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 that requires that the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury to make a public pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government. Mr. Speaker, since 2020, our economy has been unwinding from the effects of negative and even persistent global and domestic shocks that have pushed the economy to its lowest activity level. These shocks include the COVID-19 pandemic, second, the global supply chain disruptions, third, the effects of climate change from prolonged drought in 2021 and 2022, and even the floods of 2023-2024. And measures to mitigate these negative shocks embarked on structural reforms under the bottom-up economic transformation have been successful in ameliorating these effects. The efforts have reduced the cost of living and created vibrancy in the economy that have shown signs of strong economic recovery. Mr. Speaker, in several regions, Kenya has sunk into abject poverty, largely because markets in their segments were interfered with or not properly governed. The failure to protect and regulate markets disrupted their development and, more importantly, curtailed further investment in those sectors such as coffee, sugar, cotton, pyrethrum. The institutional failure problem pushed policy to fail. In this context, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda interventions at the bottom of the pyramid are targeted to ensure that the markets are properly governed to work for everybody, and especially the poor. Mr. Speaker, for Kenya to transition from the middle-income status of the economy to an upper middle-income status as envisioned in the Kenya Vision 2030, two driving factors are important. That is, we must develop our human capital capability, and we have to increase production and productivity. Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan economy is susceptible to the ravaging impact of climate change, as demonstrated in the 2021-22 severest drought, which was more severe, which we haven't seen in the last 40 years, and the events of floods that have led to massive loss of property and life. The most important thing is that these shocks have shifted budgetary resources from economic activity to saving lives and rebuilding damaged infrastructure. And this calls for urgent and decisive interventions, especially to our supply side, which I will later address in this statement. Mr. Speaker, our fiscal policy is geared towards supporting bottom-up economic transformation agenda through continued implementation of a fiscal consolidation plan designed towards slowing down the growth of public debt without compromising economic growth. The fiscal consolidation efforts will continue to target domestic revenue mobilization and rationalization of spending through improved public financial management while reallocating resources in priority areas. Mr. Speaker, in this year's budget process, we accorded Kenyans an opportunity to share their views on how to address the economic challenges facing the country. Kenyans responded to our call and requested the government to address, through this budget, first, the devastating effects of the ongoing floods, second, taxation concerns and cost of living, third, the level of unemployment, fourth, protection of the poor and the vulnerable, fifth, reduction of wastage in public expenditures at the national and county governments level. Today, Mr. Speaker, I wish to assure Kenyans that we have listened to their concerns and we have measures to address through this budget. In this regard, the budget highlights and even the government's plan to strengthen the resilience of our economy to navigate the global turbulence, accelerate economic transformation, and decisively address the overarching developmental challenges in line with better livelihood. Mr. Speaker, it is now my privilege and honor to present the economic policy context of this budget. Thereafter, I will broadly outline the policy priorities and structural reforms underpinning the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. The proposed resource allocation as well as revenue-raising measures that the government will implement in the financial year 2024-2025 budget are going to be summarized. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to remember that we have one major problem that has three phases. This problem is as follows. There is increased demands for increased spending or expenditures from the government. That means that either we have to finance that through taxes or debt. The second dimension of this problem is that there is limitation and even constraints imposed in terms of public debt accumulation and even the debt carrying capacity of the economy. That, and more fundamentally, there are limitations in terms of mobilizing higher tax revenues, something that we have to remember, something that is quite critical from our side. Let me turn now to the economic policy context. Mr. Speaker, the financial year 2024-2025 budget has been developed against a backdrop of improved growth. The world economy stood at 3.2% in terms of growth in 2023, at the same pace in 2024. In the domestic economy, Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan economy is now unwinding from layers of negative and persistent shocks and have actually have been protected and have a structural and permanent effects on the economic activities. Mr. Speaker, through forecast interventions as well as structural reforms, the policies of Kenya Kwanza government have started to yield some positive results. Economic recovery is evident, with a GDP growth of 5.6% in 2023, up from 4.9% in 2022. This is above the global average and also above the average of sub-Saharan African region. The domestic growth in 2023, so the overall inflation also declined to its target level at 5%, and in April 2024, from a peak of 9.6% in October 2022. The decline was driven mostly by easing of food and energy prices, a strong pass-through effects from exchange rate appreciation, and the impact of monetary policy actions. And the tight monetary policy has been complemented by fiscal policy measures to enhance food production through subsidy program on fertilizer and seeds. Mr. Speaker, in February this year, the government took advantage of the improved international financial market conditions to refinance the buyback of US $1.5 billion of the Eurobond 2024. The government, through this process successfully removed the uncertainty of the settlement of the Eurobond. The government also successfully issued a net history. Mr. Speaker, these two operations in February significantly improved the market perception, together with a tight monetary policy stance and significant reforms in the interbank foreign exchange market. It has brought stability in the foreign exchange market. As of 31st May 2024, the exchange rate was Kenya shillings 130.20 to the US dollar, from a high of 163 earlier on in January. And this represents a significant appreciation of 18.7%. The appreciation and stability of the exchange rate created confidence and triggered inflows of foreign exchange foreign direct investment, and attracted investors to the Nairobi Securities Exchange. In order to enhance monetary policy transmission, the Central Bank of Kenya has adopted a new monetary policy implementation framework, and this is based on inflation targeting and introduces an interest rate corridor around the central bank rate. The interbank rate is expected to be within this corridor. In addition, the Central Bank of Kenya launched the DAO CSD, a central securities depository infrastructure that delivers world-class level of registry, custodial, and even settlement services for both primary and secondary market operations. Mr. Speaker,
advantage of the DAO CSD.
I wish to encourage Kenyans and investors to take advantage of the DAO CSD to invest in risk-free treasury bills and bonds in order to grow their wealth and secure their financial future. We have simplified the DAO CSD, and investors can simply use the USSD *866# to log in and invest a retail bond for amounts as low as 600 shillings. This also will be allowed to make investments of government securities all inclusive and include the bottom of the pyramid. Mr. Speaker, the strong economic fundamentals, together with the renewed investor confidence, is a signal for accelerated, broad economic growth and creation of jobs for our youth. In 2023, the total new jobs generated in the economy increased from 848,200 jobs compared to 816,600 new jobs generated in 2022. And this is attributable to policies implemented, especially when you focus on affordable housing and the agricultural sector interventions. Looking ahead, Mr. Speaker, and considering the ongoing reforms and even additional measures the government is introducing through the budget statement, we project our economy to grow at 5.5% in 2024 and 2025. This strong growth will be supported by ongoing interventions at the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. In this regard, the government will accelerate investment in human capital development and capital accumulation, in market development, protection and regulation, in domestic resource mobilization, in reforming and restructuring government institutions, and finally, and more important, digitization to usher an era of efficiency in economic management to support economic recovery. Mr. Speaker, in order to safeguard macroeconomic stability and protect the fragile economic recovery, monetary and fiscal policies will remain very prudent. The Central Bank of Kenya will ensure inflation rate remains within target while maintaining a competitive exchange rate and stable interest rates. The Central Bank is further expected to safeguard the improvements in the functioning of the interbank foreign exchange market and apply all its instruments to strengthen the monetary policy transmission mechanism. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, fiscal policy stance over the medium term aims at supporting the government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda by delivering a strong fiscal consolidation with fiscal deficit declining from 3.3% of GDP in financial year 2024-2025 from a high of 5.7% of GDP in financial year 2023-2024. This will improve the primary surplus to 2.3% of GDP in the financial year 2023-2025 from a primary deficit of 0.4% in the previous year. I will later in this statement elaborate on policy measures to deliver the strong fiscal consolidation. Mr. Speaker, this economic outlook is not without risks. We continue to witness external shocks and recurrence of extreme weather events that not only affects the economic activities, but also pose major fiscal risks. The government will take appropriate interventions to cushion the economy from these risks. Mr. Speaker, let me now expound on the policy priorities of the government to promote economic transformation and improve livelihoods for Kenyans. First, let me start with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. To strengthen economic recovery, the government will accelerate the implementation of policies, programs, projects, and interventions in bottom-up economic transformation agenda. First, enhance agricultural transformation. Second, support enterprises. Third, provide affordable housing and settlement. Fourth, achieve universal health to the public. The government in March 2024 launched the fourth medium-term plan for the period of 2023-2027. The MTP4, as we call it, translates the better aspirations into concrete priority interventions to be implemented by both levels of government. These are premised on the value chain approach with sectors which will target sectors with the highest impact to drive the economy and sustain economic recovery. The key priority interventions focus on the following value chains. First, leather and leather products, textile and apparel, dairy, the tea industry, rice sector, edible oils, the brew economy, and natural resources, including mineral and forest, and finally the construction and building materials. The value chain approach ensures rational resource allocation by eliminating wastage of resources occasioned by duplication, overlap, fragmentation, and the ineffective coordination in the implementation of the program and projects, while promoting a whole of government approach to service delivery. To create employment, special focus has been given to investment in special economic zones and county aggregation and industrial parks, diversification of export markets, and market access of goods and services from micro, small, and medium enterprises. Mr. Speaker, the government will also undertake the following targeted strategic interventions to support economic transformation. First, the government will continue to maintain macroeconomic stability to enhance security, to foster a secure and conducive business environment while protecting Kenyans and their properties. Second, the government will scale up development of critical infrastructure in the country, such as roads, railway, air, seaports, energy, water, and reduce the cost of doing business and ease movement of people and goods, as well as promote competitiveness. Third, the government will enhance investment in key sectors for broad-based sustainable growth by promoting agricultural transformation, growth in manufacturing, environmental conservation, and climate change mitigation, stimulating growth in tourism and sustainable land use. And all this in management will actually refocus ourselves in terms of how we can get moving in these subsectors. Fourth, the government will enhance human capital development through investment in health, education, and appropriate social safety nets for vulnerable groups, vulnerable population, for improved social and economic outcomes. Fifth, the government will support the youth women, and even persons living with disabilities through government-funded empowerment programs that leverage on partnership with private sector organizations. 6, the government will support county governments through transfer of shareable revenues to strengthen their systems and capacity in service delivery. Mr. Speaker, it's important to notice that it